BattleBoss episode 2 is now out, and with that comes a new video that I have to make. Yay. Yeah, I'm planning on making a lot more videos soon. Don't worry, there's gonna be a lot, so you won't be missing out on any, and so you don't miss out on any, you can subscribe, which helps out the channel a ton, and it's free and quick. Yeah, I just had to say that because I need subscribers. Please help. And yeah, there are spoilers in this video, so if you're trying to stay away from spoilers and watching review videos, I guess that's a spoiler warning. Also, all these fights could basically be main events. This was a good episode. So the first fight was probably what should have been a main event in a different episode, which was Soulblaze versus Hypershock. Now Soulblaze was basically running the configuration you see here on screen. They added wedgelets in the middle, like a ton of them, probably to get under and control Hypershock, something like that, and basically everything else was basically the same as what you see on screen. And Hypershock was running their double disc thing and some forks, so basically what they run against anything that is not a horizontal or full body spinner. So yeah, like anything that they're afraid of getting under them. So yeah, that's the two robots who fought in this fight. So it started out with Box Rush, Hypershock getting underneath Soulblaze, which is really hard to do, and just hitting Soulblaze around. And immediately I thought, this is gonna be Hypershock's fight. Soulblaze probably doesn't stand a chance. Until Hypershock did a classic Hypershock thing and slightly goofed up. They flipped themselves over with a gyro. Now when you're facing as good of a driver as Jameson Go, that's not really what you want to do. He then cut off a wheel, was burning Hypershock with their flamethrower. They probably wouldn't like that since what grafted it to them, and smashed them against the arena wall. Hypershock tried to self-right, and Soulblaze lobbed off another wheel and then smashed into the underbelly of Hypershock, which then trapped the hammer saw in there, resulting in a simultaneous KO because they couldn't unstick the robots, which was interesting. And Soulblaze won the judge's decision, and yeah, it was a pretty cool fight. Not the best out there, but still pretty good. Two really good teams, two robots I personally like. And yeah, they put on a good show. Good first fight of the episode. I liked it. Good fun. Next up was that fight that they leaked on battlebots.com, which was Fusion versus Emulsifier. So Fusion ran their Fusion setup, which is just exactly what you see on screen here. And I didn't really think it was going to do well. I thought it was going to take a hit from Emulsifier and then light on fire, and die, which is kind of what happened. And Emulsifier also ran the exact same setup you see here on screen. And they mentioned that it was because they were more afraid of the horizontal spinner than the vertical spinner, which I get, but it also kind of didn't help them, if you know what I mean. And I did think they would win rather easily, but the fight basically started out with Fusion absolutely destroying Emulsifier, and it was kind of cool to watch because Emulsifier kept bouncing off their really big weapon, which was pretty cool. Then Fusion slightly slowed down, and Emulsifier spun up their weapon and then hit Fusion, and Fusion lit on fire. And that was like 90 seconds into the fight. And then they kept going weapon to weapon. Fusion took out like most of the tracks of Emulsifier. Emulsifier had peeled up Fusion's top armor and the wedge or thing. And it was really cool. You can see like the sparks flying here. But it was really cool. I enjoyed it personally. There was fire, there was two big powerful robots fighting each other. And when it went to the decision, Fusion won. To be honest, I kind of thought Emulsifier won. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I like Emulsifier. It's a cool robot. But yeah, it was a cool fight. I liked it, and it was good. Like, what more do you want of a fight than it to be entertaining? Like, that's basically why you watch TV and stuff. But yeah, I liked it. Good fight. Next up was two legends fighting in what was probably the worst fight of the episode, and that is Valkyrie versus Mammoth. Now, Valkyrie was going with the setup you see here on screen, and they have that Athena disc, which, side note, wrong mythology. Athena's Greek, Valkyries are Norse. Yes, I am a Rick Riordan fan. And then you have Mammoth, who was also running the configuration that you see here on screen, but the motor boxes had bigger guards to protect from the horizontal spinner or undercutter of Valkyrie, which, yeah. And they had those big fork tusk things. And you see where I'm going here. And this image is basically the whole fight, or 99% of the fight. So the robots just collide, basically. Valkyrie hits a fork thing of Mammoth. They get stuck together, and Mammoth starts punching Valkyrie in the face, which is not very polite, Mammoth. And yeah. And eventually they knocked each other free, and Valkyrie then did something. I don't know what they did. They just knocked over Mammoth, and Mammoth's weapon thing self-destructed, and Mammoth got KO'd because it was upside down and couldn't self-right. So basically it's a help I've fallen and I can't get up. I was kind of hoping for more. Like, this fight was just a bit And I know there was a bit of destruction, and Team Mammoth went through a lot to repair the robot probably for its next fight, but it wasn't really as entertaining as some of the others. But next up was a pretty entertaining fight between another set of two legends, or, well, one legend and another good robot, which was Mad Catter vs Whiplash. And Mad Catter basically ran this configuration that you see here on screen. Oh no, was it slightly different? I don't know, something like this. And then Whiplash used a few more forks than what's on the screen here. Don't know where they got that weight from, but maybe it was from the back armor. Yeah. If you've watched the fight, you know where I'm going with that. You'd understand. So yeah, that was what Whiplash was running. And so basically at the start, the two robots, neither of them was getting under the other, and Whiplash spun down their weapon and then never spun it up again, which was an interesting choice because it might have actually saved them if they had have spun it up, because they could have done some damage to the cat that is mad. And they locked horns for like a minute, and then Mad Cat lifted up their weapon, their lifter thingy, their lifter, that's what it's called, a lifter. English. Yes. And then they started hitting Mad Cat, Whiplash, wrong robot. And then they just started going to town and ripping up Whiplash and causing quite a bit of damage. And in the final hit, that reference I made before, yeah, they smashed Whiplash's back panel, tore off the whip bit on the Whiplash bit on the back, and then their batteries fell out. Whiplash was dead, basically. I don't know if it was a battery, it was something. Whiplash could barely move. That was the end of the fight. It was pretty good, if I'm being honest. Like, not the best, but still pretty good. Like, not quite as good as Fusion vs. Emulsifier. So next up was Switchback versus Banshee. Switchback was running a wedge for goodness knows why reasons. Like, why run a wedge when you're going against an opponent with low ground game? But this Switchback does look way better than it did last year. And yeah, its opponent, however, was running the configuration you see here on screen. So Banshee will use their weird fork things. And yeah, Banshee's a new robot, by the way, so you wouldn't have seen it before. And it's pretty good. Look, it looks good. As for what happened in the fight, Banshee and Switchback, they just circled each other. Banshee landing a few flips, Switchback landing a few hits. You see one of them here on screen. Eventually Banshee did flip Switchback over. Switchback self-righted, but then couldn't move their self-rider because of, I don't know, like, then Banshee flipped the arm of Switchback, which then made Switchback have their thing right set up, and then Switchback came back to life basically and kept hitting Banshee. Eventually their weapon stopped. Also, the weapon on Switchback is very loud. Ended up going to a judge's decision. Banshee lost it, and Switchback won their fight. It wasn't the most convincing fight victory ever though, and it seems like they've gave Banshee a bit of a hard schedule, if I'm being honest. Like, I feel like they're kind of using it as a feeder bot a little bit. And then we have the pre-main event fight, or whatever you want to call it. So it was Hijinks versus Big Dill. Now Hijinks was running apparently what's like their heaviest bar or something, I don't know, and they had this really weird top armor configuration, and yeah, it looked a bit weird, not quite as sleek as regular Hijinks. And Big Dill, they ditched the vert and then only used their lifter thing, which I had all melded into one piece. Probably didn't help them, because, yeah, they probably needed the spinner. But then again, Hijinks is a pretty destructive spinner. And it started off with Hijinks going tail first into Big Deal. Big Deal actually losing the ground game to Hijinks, which is interesting. You don't normally see that with horizontal spinners. Hijinks landed a few blows, things like that. Big Deal then lifted Hijinks after ramming it into the screws. Hijinks got flipped over. Then Hijinks hit Big Deal, and Big Deal basically lit on fire. Something took out their weapon motor, and that was probably what led to Big Deal losing the fight. But still, it was pretty good. But yeah, it ended pretty quickly though, if I'm being honest. And there's the image of Big Deal just on fire. Like, we ended up with some roasted pickle, which doesn't sound delicious, if I'm being honest. Because, yeah. But it was pretty good, though I am hoping to see the Vert in the next Big Deal fight. Now it's time for the main event, which was, of course, Endgame versus Blip. Now, Endgame has this new configuration where they have like those piano key wedgelets things, as well as some forks, well, slightly smaller forks. But, yeah. Of course, Endgame just won, like, the Golden Bowl and the 2020 Championship. And then we have Blip, who's one of my favourite robots. I love Blip, and I was personally hoping for it to win this fight, actually. And they were basically running the on-screen configuration, except they had these two little things on the front of the flipper. Don't know what those were for, really. But, yeah. They also have bigger side guards, stuff like that this year. And the fight immediately started. Endgame got onto Blip, and we all knew where it was going from there. Blip really didn't stand a chance. Endgame was just on point, ripping wedgelets off, doing massive damage, stuff like that. Sparks were everywhere, and honestly, Blip wasn't going to stand a chance. Like, they might have possibly won if they had have got under Endgame. But Endgame's ground game is too on point for that. And Endgame's weapon eventually got shot down, possibly from a piece of Blip, disabling their weapon. It ended up in a shoving fight. Endgame, of course, won the decision. So, overall, some pretty good fights this episode. Some of the fights made this episode better than last episode. I don't know. I kind of preferred as an overall episode, I preferred episode 1, but episode 2 was still great. And episode 3 seems to be going possibly even better. But I'm really excited to see what the rest of this tournament and however you pronounce it. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. Next, I'll have a predictions video for next episode, just so you know. You can look out for that, and you can make sure that you are there for that review or that predictions. There will also be what happened video similar to this. If you want to see that, subscribe. Also, these videos do take quite a bit to make, like often nearly 1.5 hours, so it'd be lovely if you could subscribe. So anyway, that's the end of the video.